I'm Sean Wakimalo in Abuja. Well, tonight we'll look at quite a few issues, but first our attention is on the tragic incident in Tudunbrini community, and we shall be getting there in a moment. And also we shall be having an exclusive conversation with the Minister of Communications, Dr. Bosun Tijani, on the program tonight. That ministry is supposed to be a money-spinning ministry for the nation. If you know what the economy of California alone is in the United States, and you know what some of the major tech companies are amassing in terms of revenue and profit, then you will understand what Bosun Tijani is sitting on in this ministry and the potential that Nigeria has. In the last 100 days, what has become of that ministry and what has he done? We'll be probing some of his activities tonight on the program, and whether or not the Tinubu government has what it takes in that ministry to deliver to Nigerians. But first, our attention and our heart goes out tonight to the families, people in Kaduna State, and those who have lost their loved ones in that sad incident, and the tragic scene in the Tudunbrini community in the Igabi local government area of Kaduna State, where about 85 persons we understand now have now been confirmed dead. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taoreed Lagwaja, has described the deadly airstrike that killed the 85 people and injured several others in Kaduna State as regrettable. He said the victims 2 days after the accidental strike in the Igabi area of the northwest state promised to guard against such an occurrence in the conduct of military operations in the future. The army chief, who also visited the state at the site of the mishap, has thrown the nation into a sorrowful mood, apologized on behalf of the Nigerian military to the community, the government, and the people of Kaduna City. He was accompanied by principal staff officers from the Army headquarters and the general officer commanding the 1st Division, and also met with the Dangala Dima Zozo, the district head of Rigasa, Aminu Idris, and all the leaders and members of the community. The Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawale, has also visited, is being on the ground, speaking about this. The President, Bola Tinubu, has in fact ordered a thorough investigation in the incident. Take a listen to the Chief of Army Staff and the Minister of State for Defense.
My assessment of that unfortunate incident of Sunday, the 3rd of December 2023, is that it's grave, it's regrettable, but we will do everything possible to prevent such an occurrence happening again in the conduct of our operations going forward. I've gone around to visit and interact with the members of the community. I've come again now to the hospital to see the injured. And this will help me to know the level of expertise that I need to put on the table in conducting the inquiry into what happened on Sunday, so that that inquiry can come up with relevant recommendations that will guide us in the conduct of our operations going forward.
We're not going to relent to our actions, because these criminals, we must defeat them by God grace. So we are going to continue fighting the criminals till we succeeded on fighting against banditry and other criminalities in this country. Therefore, it is just an unfortunate incident that happens, and God has already destined that this will happen, and it has happened. All we do is to pray for the deceased who already gone, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless them with Jannah Firdaus, and for those in the hospital to have a prayer.
Some of the soundbite from the saying from Chief of Army Staff and the Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawale. Let's get some insight on this one for those who are worked around the security situation in Kaduna State, spoken to leaders, spoken to stakeholders, and will perhaps have some insights into this matter. Tonight, I'm being joined by Professor Usman Yusuf. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Shehu.
How do you describe this kind of incident, Prof?
Every Nigerian, every human being is saddened by what we saw. my description is not acceptable. This is totally irresponsible. This is not the first time. We've had such incidences in Borno State, Nasarawa State recently. We've had incidents in Benue State. We've had such incidences in Kaduna State, and now in Kaduna State, the home state of the Chief of Defense Staff. Each time we hear the military telling us it was a mistake, regrettable. Our military killing our people instead of protecting our people. A time of war, when our people are suffering, bandits are killing us all over the land, the military is dropping ordnance on our people. It's not acceptable. What this has shown, number one, is clear incompetence. You have a young operative somewhere sitting, watching a screen, and then just dropping a bomb on people, predominantly women and children.
It's an unmanned air
Yeah, but somebody
drone.
did it. Yeah, somebody was managing it.
Remotely.
Absolutely. It didn't come from the sky or from Niger or anywhere. Drones are controlled. Somebody must take responsibility. And it shows incompetence, it shows lack of training, and it shows lack of supervision in the military. Who gave this young operative order to press that button to drop a bomb? Who did? We are dropping a bomb on human beings, predominantly women and children. We have seen clips, videos of this family, of these children and women before. And we saw them charred in this bomb. They should not be bombing people. They should go and be bombing Sambisa Forest.
Have you heard the side of the Nigerian the defense headquarters, what they said about this? The defense headquarters said it is regrettable, and the fact that the military views these, that every civilian death in the course of operation is a tragedy, and such tragedies are needless and unwanted, and which causes the armed forces to take extensive measures to avoid them. They went further to say, for instance, communities are to always alert troops of the activities, particularly when such a community is known to be infested with terrorists and their sympathizers. They are saying that oftentimes there are embedding of terrorists within some of these communities. Doesn't this make the work of the military difficult?
This irritates everybody, and it should. Where is the military intelligence? What intelligence did they use to drop bombs on people? Do they think they're going to win this war on banditry just by dropping bombs from the sky?
They say that it should be noted that terrorists often deliberately embed themselves within civilian population centers for the civilian population to bear the consequences of their atrocities.
Right. For goodness sake, the military, whoever is writing this, they should take him off. This is a time when sensible, reasonable people should be talking. The military should completely own this tragedy and not be given excuses. These are excuses that we have no patience for. These are excuses. Whoever is writing that and sending it out should be removed from office. The military leadership should be more responsible to people in grief than that statement. That statement is saying is the fault of the people. No, it isn't. It's the fault of the military, it's the fault of the army specifically, because the Air Force came out the first time and disowned them and said in the last 24 hours they did not conduct any operation. It is the army, the air wing of the army that botched this operation, that killed our people. And they must take full responsibility. And my call to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the military cannot investigate itself, because it has not investigated itself in all the massacres it has conducted over the air.
If you are to advise, or if you are to say the kind of and the manner in which the investigation should go or take, what would you do?
Independent of the military. All the bombs they've dropped on people over the last, in all the 5 states they did, what came of it in their investigation? I am calling on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to institute a high-powered, independent investigative committee headed by a retired Chief Justice of the Federation. And in that committee, there should be a retired Chief of Service Chief, and an emir, traditional clerics, and CSOs to protect civilians. The military is supposed to protect us, not be killing us. And let me say this. This only vindicates the concern international community has been having about Nigerian army. You remember during the time of Jonathan? They stopped selling weapons, lethal weapons, to the Nigerian armed forces because of this. And we are seeing this. The world is watching. You are dropping bombs on innocent women and children, going on a religious procession. The military is threading on very, very thin ice. Very, very thin ice. This is, religion comes into this, we are dousing. Traditional rulers, clerics are now talking to people. This is a religious procession. Can Nigerians understand what would have happened if a Christian procession in Plateau or Kaduna was bombed? Big churches from the south specifically would have raised their voices all over Nigeria today. We need to be very, very careful. The military should know better. You become a general to think better than a captain. This is irresponsible.
I mean, in other times, if this kind of situation happens, what do you think would have happened?
They will all resign. Everybody in the chain of command will be fired. The CDS, Chief of Defense Staff, everybody will go. And the president would have cut his trip to come back home and see our people. But here you are apologizing. Where are the ministers? You are going to talk to the Minister of Communication. No, you should be talking to the Ministers of Defense. You should be talking to the NSA. You should be talking to the service chiefs to explain to Nigerians why this happened and what are they going to do to prevent this. But the army cannot investigate itself. There should be a high-powered, independent committee headed by a retired CJN. And in there should be a service chief. What we need to see is thorough investigation to see what is the assessment, who gave this young operative the order to fire, what's the chain of command, what is the supervisory control. There is no control.
Can you hold a chief of army staff, a general in the army, for the error that is being made by a group in a particular division that carried out this kind of attack? How do you hold, what sense will it mean?
That's why he's the chief of army staff. You're in control of this studio, and anything that happens, you're responsible. And they need to understand, leaders have forfeited the right to make excuses. And this has been the excuses they've given us. You are the chief of army staff, 3-star general, over and above many officers for a very good reason. You give orders and you take responsibility. Who asked this young
resign or step aside or
all of them should go. The CDS, the chief of army staff, the GOC, the operative heads must roll. And whoever gave this authority, if there was no chain of command, if there is laxity in the chain of command, which I'm very sure there is, nowhere in the country would a young operative sit down before his screen and just press a button to drop a bomb and kill over 100 people without escalating that to the higher authority.
Let's imagine what is going on in the mind of the young fellow who triggered the UAV, who fired that bomb. Perhaps what we were seeing on the screen was a movement of the possible terrorists who they said have merged into these communities, and there are traces, there are historically how these terrorist elements have infested these areas and merged into the communities. Is it possible that some of these terrorists are so sly to the extent to have tricked our forces into this kind of mistake?
This is stupid excuses that we have no patience for.
I mean, I'm just imagining.
No. Let me
just reading the mind.
No, let me tell you
what the possibility.
That is the reason you should have intelligence on the ground.
Before taking the shot.
That young man sitting there doing that, he doesn't do it on his own. There has to be intelligence on the ground. They escalate to the big bosses. The big boss will ask him to do what he did. That is why only an independent committee, not within the military, can bring this out. The military cannot investigate itself, and we should not allow it to investigate itself. And the military, especially the army, it has shown its inexperience in all of this. It should suspend all drone activities until this is fully investigated.
Is this a setback of some sort?
Absolutely.
On the assault on terrorism in Nigeria?
So now we are talking. We have been talking the new service chiefs since they have come. They've been singing the same old song we've had over the last 8 years. But we have not seen any new ideas or plans to do anything differently. None.
But there are those who will say there is a lull in some of the terrorist activities within the Northwest region.
We know better. We know better. And we've said it again and we'll repeat it again. Banditry is cannot be won on the battlefield. Anybody who says that does not know what he's doing or he knows he's disingenuous. Back to this problem. This problem is sad, it's tragic, and people should be held responsible. From the Chief of Defense Staff, who is the top military officer, to the Chief of Army Staff, to the GOC, down the rank.
If you were President Tinubu, what would you do today?
Today, like I said, I will institute a high-powered investigative committee headed by a retired Chief Justice of the Federation.
Would you get on the ground yourself?
Pardon?
Would you get on the ground yourself?
Me
if you were the president?
Absolutely. President Biden will go anywhere. That's the president of the strongest country in the world. But our president just sit down there and just keep issuing affirmation by this thing. You need to be there. You need to talk with people.
85 persons.
85. More. No, it's more.
These are mothers.
It's more.
These are young girls.
These are children.
These are people, children.
These are children.
These are people's families. These are people who have future ahead of them.
Yes. And the army,
all of a sudden.
And the army is telling us they are infiltrated. Do not annoy us. You've annoyed us. You've killed enough people. Do the right thing. Accept responsibility, step back, and allow full investigation. Suspend all drone activities within that theater of operation. And Mr. President, we call on you to institute a high-powered committee headed by a retired Chief Justice of the Federation. There should be a retired service chief in there, emirs and traditional. This is taking religious dimension that we're asking people to calm down. Traditional rulers are working really hard. Clerics are working really hard. This was a religious procession that was bombed, innocent people, women and children, and the clips are all over the world. And the world is watching. The world is watching. Who will sell lethal arm to the Nigerian armed forces when they are dropping it on their people?
Prof, so sad, a sad day, a sad scenario, and this, the military has said, is perhaps the deadliest in any of the bomb accident that we've seen in this country. So sad. I'm hoping that a drastic decision and action will be taken to forestall any kind of recurrence. Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
We take a break, everyone. I'm going on a commercial break. And when we return, the Minister of Communication, Dr. Bosun Tijani, will be joining me next. What can we do with artificial intelligence? What is the mandate of that ministry? We'll be hearing more after now, everyone. Understand? So much everyone for joining us. Let's get to our conversation. Exclusive conversation with the Honorable Minister for Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani, who joins us live here in our studio. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
There is a huge responsibility on your ministry. It's one of the ministry that we understand that the president is looking forward to, that Nigeria is going to not only get a global acclaim in terms of what we are capable of doing, but also the kind of money, digital economy. The president had turned some ministry into economic, he's look at the viability, the way manner it has been tweaked. If you look at the Ministry of Culture, it's tweaked it into an economic ministry also, such as yours. So, but then, what would you say the mandates, simply put? Because we understand that there was somewhat an understanding between the president and his ministers on performance, which you guys signed the dotted lines. Sorry. What is the president expecting from you?
Sure, I think I should start by expressing my deep condolences for the lives lost in Kaduna to the unfortunate accident. So the question, it's not just about money. It's not just about what we can bring into the economy. I think it's been well documented over many years in humanity, the role of technology in driving economic growth and prosperity. And what the president is looking at here, with a very clear understanding
that the diversification of the Nigerian economy that we are all interested in can only be achieved through technical efficiency. And in this sense, it's about how do we bring modern digital technologies to disrupt the way we currently do things in many aspects of our society. When you look at the challenges that we face in education, for instance, what role can technology play to help to improve the learning outcomes in that space? How can technology help in education, in agriculture, to raise the level of productivity just to ensure, that we can actually produce not only to feed ourselves, but also to export? But I think the exciting thing about technology and how it can influence our economy is actually around the talent. As you know, Nigeria is a country with over 60% of our population under the age of 25, which means we're a very youthful population. And the global technology workforce is facing a massive decline where in many Western countries, they actually don't have enough workforce. So not only can we produce talents to leapfrog and develop our own economy, we can actually become a net exporter of talents as well. So when you look at technology and the role that our ministry play in that sense, you see that there's no strong future for Nigeria without the Ministry of Communications, Innovation, and Digital Economy.
There are those who will say, yes, you have experience. That is what you've done for the best part of your life. Absolutely. And there are those who will say, let us see the footprint of what you are capable of. I mean, there are the government have been criticized for even using Yahoo Mail to transact and to relate and communicate official messages from government. Absolutely. So in that sense, there are those who will say, what have you shown in the last few days to show that there is someone who has the expertise that is on board?
So the challenge with technology is that technology in itself is not just about the tool. There's a strong social element to it. If you look at the history of how we've deployed technology in Nigeria, the government has actually invested significantly in technology, but most of the time this has been done in silos. And those silos is where the challenge is, because when you do these things in silo, you don't have the opportunity at scale to actually encourage the usage. So what we've done is to understand that this is not something you just come in and switch on. It doesn't work that way, because the reason why you still see those emails are more people issue than actually just technology issue. So there's a lot of change management that needs to happen in the adoption.
There are those who will say also policy.
No, there is policy.
So are you creating policy?
Absolutely.
There are policies, infrastructure, absolutely. And the end point, the end goal is for us to see not only in terms of money, but literally we're seeing a change. Those who advise, they say, go to China, look at their airport, digitize. As soon as you are landing there, you see the difference. Go to Singapore, you will see. If you are arriving in some part of the world, everything is almost digitized. You go to a restaurant. But again, there are those who will say, do we have infrastructure? We are still having drop calls in this country without those telcos are just doing the way they like and without apologies, in the manner in which business as usual. These are some of the issues. And if you say that it's about social issues, but the question is that, have you been able to introduce policies that will drive the social change?
Absolutely. Of course, policy is not something you introduce in 3 months. If anyone is promising you that, that's a big fat lie. You don't introduce policy in 3 months. But one thing we've done in the first 100 days that is proving to be extremely tactical, but also strategic as well, is the introduction of our strategic blueprint. And I always ask people to go back to the strategic blueprint, because this is the sort of public agreement, with the citizens and the stakeholders on how we're going to go about delivering the renewed hope agenda. And what you have in the strategic blueprint are 5 distinct, clear pillars, which start with knowledge, saying that you cannot appropriate and leverage technology effectively in any society without having the workforce and the know-how. The second is what you're referring to, which is policy. And we've clearly stated there a list of set of policies that we're actually either going to be working on or updating to ensure that Nigeria can benefit deeply from digital technologies. The third thing we've done is actually in that pillar, we've introduced what we've called infrastructure, which is understanding the fact that at the base, we do have as a country a significant investment that has gone into communication infrastructure. Nigeria is one of the few countries in Africa with 7 submarine cables, now going to 9 because Meta is bringing another 2, which is landing before the end of the year. That's significant investment that can actually help to improve the quality of connectivity in the country. And what we're also doing on that infrastructure is to then say, how do we mobilize resources to ensure that that submarine cable can be taken into every corner of the country? So if you read that document, you're going to find that there. And to the point you were making about drop calls is a function of many things, not just the inefficiency of the MNOs. Drop call is a function of the base stations being installed to carry the communication, sometimes being destroyed. Drop calls is a function of availability of the base station itself. And what we're doing is that if we drive the investment into fiber optic cables across Nigeria, you will see the quality of connectivity is going to go up significantly.
How much of that have we been able to in terms of fiber connectivity?
So there is clear targets. There's a work that has been done by the last government that's clearly stated that Nigeria needs to lay 95,000 kilometers of cable. Where we are at about now is about 35,000 to 45,000 has been laid. Our goal in the next 4 years is to plug that gap significantly. And in the last 3 months, we've actually done significant work, which is leading us to being able to set up a fund that will help companies to lay those cables. And it can be done.
So is this a government-funded project?
No, government.
So it's private sector that is laying the cables?
Yes, it's private sector that is laying the cable, but we're looking to mobilize development fund to set up a fund that the private sector can draw from. That's not a government fund. It's a fund that the private sector can draw from and use that to lay the cable. Because there are a few issues around laying cable. Private companies will tell you, I can't lay fiber optic cable in certain areas because those areas are not commercially viable. But what we're building is the ability to say, at the barest minimum, we should be able to connect our schools, hospitals, government offices. Because once we can do this, you start to see changes in the delivery of public services, to citizens, but also it becomes more effective as well for government to provide services. These are things that we've stated clearly, very clearly in our strategic blueprint.
Yeah, you've talked about infrastructure, policy, then the other legs are innovation, entrepreneurship, and capital, then trade. And I will go there, but I will also like you to touch on the low-hanging fruit, because Nigerians want to see how their lives can be better, yes, in the long run, good, which will last and be permanent, but they want what they can also get now. So, and I'd like you to quickly clarify for us, because since you're here, do we have 5G in Nigeria yet?
We do in some places. We do
how
have 5G.
Effective it is, because there is a lot of distrust that a lot of these operators, they will tell you they have 5G.
Yeah, they do.
But in the real sense, they're selling fake and lies to customers, and we are buying all of these. And those who will say in the early years of selling 5G, it never existed actually in this country.
I totally disagree. And my job is not to come on here to defend MNOs, even though I'm the regulator in essence of that sector. I personally don't think the MNOs are lying. I think that's based on, so the infrastructure that drives 5G is not something that is across the entire nation. So if you're subscribed to 5G and you move into locations where the infrastructure cannot support it, of course the quality will drop. But 5G exists in Nigeria. There are telcos who have the license, and that license it's already being provided. It's dead, it's not live. So that's something we need to clarify.
So you're monitoring the quality also.
Of course, that's the role of NCC.
Because a lot of Nigerians who are watching tonight, who are having problems in connectivity, especially their mobile connections, not to talk of internet connections.
Absolutely.
And there seems to be, so you have, and I can tell you easily, I mean, a lot of the times, before you get into government, perhaps you've seen it happen a lot of times. And I'm not talking about being in your office, because you would have provided a strong internet connection in your home and in your office. There are a lot of the times you connect with someone in London, you connect with someone in New York, in the US, their own connection on Skype, on Zoom, crisp. But over here, then you have problems. So the question will be, even when there are drop costs, when there are problems, you imagine that some of these operators will reach out to customers to say, tomorrow we are going to be having a problem with our connection. Bear with us. These are some of the incentives that we're giving you because we had, in the last 3 days, bad networks. You can imagine how many times I wanted to call out operators online. I just look.
I think there's some intellectual conversations around this, and I do know that ordinary citizens without the technical understanding of how these services are provided may not have the understanding. So there are times that you experience bad connection. Again, I'm not here to take on brief for, but there are times you experience bad connection that is simply due to the fact that an infrastructure has been destroyed somewhere. So one of the first memo that I've been working on as a minister is actually to declare telecommunications infrastructure critical national infrastructure. Because there are times people go vandalize a base station, steal some of the things there to go resell. Every time that is done, it gets in the way of quality of connection that citizens get. There are times people dig the ground and they end up breaking fiber optic cables. Those fiber optic cables also contribute to the quality of service that you and I get. Those things are not, the telcos are not pre-warned that someone is going to go somewhere to steal something. The quality of service, in their opinion, they want you to experience the best quality of service.
But Minister, I'm looking at the fact that the customer is king in that industry.
It is, yeah.
And so when there's a disruption, the customer is not a witch or a magician to know what exactly the problem is. Isn't it incumbent on the provider to say, yes, we had a problem yesterday, apologies for the problem. But they don't just go on as though nothing is happening.
For them,
there are a lot of people who say
Nigeria
it's just a climate.
So for them, typically what they would do is switch into action to try and go plug that gap where there's that infrastructure that has been destroyed. What we're now doing with NCC is actually shifting. So we used to call this quality of service. We're now shifting it to quality of experience. The conversation is now moving into the need for MNOs to actually engage the citizen. Because there's a lot of knowledge gap around the services that you consume, what leads to quality and what leads to bad quality services most of the time. So that conversation is what needs to be managed, and is one of the things that myself and the head of NCC is now looking to improve, to ensure that the MNOs not only take into consideration the provision of quality service from the hard side, but also through engagement.
I'd like to obtain a commitment from you tonight.
Absolutely.
And for a lot of my viewers of this program who are trusting that since you're here, we might as well be able to let everyone know that it is not business as usual in this country.
It's not.
Where people take your money.
It's not.
And if you can give a commitment tonight, that it won't be business as usual. If the MNOs, if the operators have a problem, they should, as a matter of respect to customers and the decency of their service and the provision of their service, to reach out tonight. Are you able to commit to that tonight?
Absolutely, I'm committing to it, but I'm not committing to it with vague words. I'm committing to it in two ways. First is at NCC today, there's a strong drive to engage and ensure that the quality of service is topmost on the agenda of the entire industry. That's something I'm committing to, and we're prioritizing that. But the second thing also from a technical perspective, which is a conversation that is not common, is that I understand as a minister that if we prioritize fiber optic cable in this country, quality of service, whether it's through your normal mobile telephony or the internet services that you use at home, it's going to go off the roof. And that's the commitment I'm also making, that in the next 4 years, we are going to do everything possible to increase the number of kilometers of fiber optic cable in Nigeria.
How long can that take us? We've done 35.
The goal is to reach,
how many kilometers?
We're about 35, 40 kilometers right now.
And we needed to go to about 90.
We need to go to 95,000 kilometers.
So we're about a quarter
almost halfway in there. Almost halfway in there as a country.
And it will cost us how many
From the calculation, this is a good question. We did the calculation. I've had meetings over meetings, and we finished that meeting today on this particular conversation. It's going to cost us roughly about $1.5 to $2 billion to wire the entire Nigeria and to reach that 95,000.
What is the timeline, the duration that this?
Well, we hope that we can accelerate in the next 6 to 12 months, secure that funding that private companies can tap into. It's not government money. And hopefully then work with serious companies that can lay fiber over the next 2 to 3 years. We're hoping that before the first 4 years of this administration, that a significant portion of that 95,000 kilometers can be covered. We've made that commitment. If you check that strategic blueprint, you will find it there. I understand this sector, and I'm not one, Sheung, to commit to solutions that will only make our lives better in the next 1 or 2 months, but to commit to solutions that will ensure that not only are we able to talk about 5G, but any technology that is coming beyond that, the Nigeria can actually participate and benefit from it.
So one area that I'd like you to speak on, because a lot of you who pioneered, who had the opportunity, the benefit of the first entrance in into your sector. And it's sad for me to say this a lot of the times, but it's also an eye-opener. If you're singing or you're playing football in my own time, going to secondary school, you sing as a ridiculous student. But it's gotten to the point that every person wants his or her child to play football, because if you go to Europe, you make a lot of money. Everybody now wants his or her own child to be a Davido, a Burna Boy, or even be a Moses Bliss. And when on some of these streaming platforms, they're making enormous money. But guess what? Nigeria is not making any money out of those revenues that these young persons are making. And by the way, it's an opportunity for me to say, those young Nigerians who are making effort and train the blades, whatever they are, kudos to you, and you're making us proud. Wherever you're selling out O2 Arena, selling out London stadiums. And you wonder, what are we doing to get to that level such that these streaming platforms, some of this money can come into the Nigerian economy?
I'm from the sector, and I'm one of the people who started the first technology hubs in this country, right? So what you're speaking to, I understand the technical side of it. It's a function of investment and return, right? And globally, the source of funding to technology and media is traditionally been from the US. Again, I direct your viewers to the strategic blueprint that we've released. You see, the portion where you called innovation, entrepreneurship, and capital is actually focused on raising the stock of local patient capital that can go into technology companies. Because the reason why we lose out from the returns that you're mentioning is that the bulk of the money that goes into investment into technology companies, media companies, they come from abroad. And their investors would typically require that they domicile their businesses outside of the country. So what we're doing, which is we've set out for ourselves, is to actually say, we need good quality stock of money. And the first thing that we worked on, which was led from the Vice President office, is over $650 million US funding to technology and creative companies in Nigeria, which is now going to open up and is going to be active. In my ministry, we have it in our agenda again to not only limit that funding to that 650, but to raise more money. And if you read that document, it clearly states that we want to increase the percentage of locally domiciled technology and creative companies in Nigeria. The way you capture that value is for them to be able to access capital locally and get them to domicile locally through policies and enabling environment, which will allow them to believe that they can domicile their businesses in Nigeria, and that's how government and society benefit from it. This is something I understand very deeply, and I've been championing even before becoming a minister.
So you look at it, the state in the United States where the big techs are domiciled has perhaps the GDP of that state is perhaps almost larger than more than half of the African continent. And you imagine that is just one state, and it tells you, and you will say that the GDP of just about 5 or 6 of the US tech companies, Facebook, Google, and the rest of them, the big ones, are in fact bigger than the whole economy of Nigeria I'm talking about. And so you imagine how enormous the potential of tech is in Nigeria. What are we looking in that direction? Where are we going to situate it?
That's what I said.
What are the opportunities and what is the immediate plan?
That is the description of the strategic blueprint that I've been talking about, driving economic growth through technical efficiency. You see what you've described, and most of the time we don't pay attention to where that competitiveness originated from for those countries you're talking about. Historically, these are countries that a lot of them are older than ours. A lot of these countries had the privilege and the opportunity to invest in the first, second, and third industrial revolution. And those industrial revolutions were led by technology. All the technologies that the entire globe consumed before we got to the point where we now started to use digital technologies were produced by them. So they were sitting on that pile of cash to be able to build themselves into the fourth industrial revolution, which is where we now have the opportunity to play. And when we look at the numbers, when I started CC Hub 15 years ago, Nigeria was not rated at all as part of the technology superpower on the African continent. Today, Nigeria has the highest number of African companies that are worth over $1 billion US. The highest number of unicorns are from Nigeria. In 15 years of people actually believing that technology can do this. If we're being honest to ourselves, I think your last question segue perfectly into this one, but I think this should have come before that. In the sense that when you look at the media space as well, we now have giants and superstars that are commanding significant amount of money. It is cup that is half full, not empty. And what we need to be doing is the question you asked earlier, Shell, which is, now that we're seeing a lot of our people creating businesses in tech, in media, we have personality that are earning well, what do we do to ensure that we can domicile them back home? We don't need to complain about it as if we've lost. What we've done is we've gotten to the stage where we're now part of that global economy. But the global economy is structured to capture the best from anywhere in the world. It is our responsibility to ensure that we can bring that best back. And there's no other government, I believe, can do it but this government. Our president is very, very pro-business. The only thing he wants to talk about, what do we do to help businesses? It's prioritizing small businesses. It's prioritizing large businesses. I'm from the startup ecosystem. If there's anyone that understands the growth that we've seen in the last 15 years, I think I'm the one. So we're in a perfect position.
Let me put you on the spot.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to ask you, we know that oil is our mainstay. And there are a lot of Nigerians and the world was in Dubai talking about how to cut down fossil fuel. And you wonder, those policies, we have not even moved close into achieving the full potential of what fossil fuels would do for us, and whether or not our environment or our technology here in Nigeria is ready for that revolution. But the question is, what kind of economy or the quantum, what is the amount of the tech can we achieve within the next 2 years?
The amount of tech that we can achieve.
The number, the quantum, in terms of monetary value.
You're in the media space, and I'm sure if I tell you about fintech, you have a solid understanding of it. You know why you do? Because in the last 5 years, Nigeria built a significant industry within the fintech space. We rode off the back of the progress that we made with the banking sector, which has been extremely innovative in the last 10, 15 years. And then with the creation of NIBS, the Interbank Exchange System, and you started seeing a lot of startups that were building for fintech. In a space of 5 years, we've seen significant number of fintechs coming from Nigeria. What is possible in 2 to 4 years in Nigeria is that we can prioritize agriculture, education, and mainstream technologies in those sectors. And the biggest opportunity that I think we're all sleeping on is actually the fact that the president took away this fuel subsidy. I expect that everywhere will be littered with conversation on energy transition. If we do that, we're a country that still needs to balance our sources of energy, right? And we have the opportunity for us to be talking energy transition, the amount of investment in the world that exists for that space. The innovators should be talking about it. If I was still at CC Hub, a unit will be focused on energy transition. I started something similar with UNIDO before leaving. But right now, there's a need for a strong focus on that area. Because if we focus there, not only can we drive significant investment to our market, we can begin to create businesses at the level of what we've done with fintech. So there's massive opportunity there. Nobody is stopping us. But I think at the minute, in the last 3 months or 6 months of this administration, there's been a bit of focus on talking down the administration.
What kind of the measure? If you put a measure to it, what amount are we how can you measure the kind of money that can come out of that sector within the next
energy transition,
No, I'm talking about the IT sector. With I mean, we have not fully gained advantage of that. But if you calculate what our oil sector gives to us, we know what our Greek sector is giving to us. We know what our export sector is giving us. In that sector, what kind of
let me put it. What is
the margin?
In context with the numbers that we're seeing at the minute, right? I would imagine the potentials for technology in Nigeria is still probably at about 2%. Hypothetically, I've not used anything to
of the entire GDP
of what it's possible. It's not up to.
We've not even scratched the surface.
I don't think so. But you know the funny thing, Shil? Last quarter, the sector contributed over 16% to our GDP. That's the context you're looking for. So if people still think like we're talking about something that is a joke, imagine a sector that is still just at about 2%. It's about 2%. You mentioned it at the start of this thing that you go to places when you go to the airport, it's automated, schools are automated, hospitals. We were not automated yet. Yet, that sector contributed over 16% to our GDP.
Minister,
so if we drive that sector with the kind of energy, I'll implore anyone that is interested in this sector to go look for that strategic blueprint. There's no need talking.
Where can they find it?
It's on the website of the ministry.
You know,
Federal Ministry of Communications. It's on. Just put it in Google. You will find out the website of the ministry. Right. Go on there. You will see the strategic blueprint. Every conversation you want to have.
We can help you. Yeah. If you cannot find it, I promise you, just get onto Channels Television's website tonight. You will find it. We'll put a copy there.
Federal Ministry of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy. You'll find it.
So in case, you get it there. But again, let's look at it this way. If there is one major thing that Nigeria can export to the rest of the world in terms of digital economy, what would that be?
It's talent. That's why I'm aggressive about it. The first program I launched is the 3 million technical talent. It's talent. You go to Europe, it's aging population. Their population is declining. Those that they have are aging. They're not giving birth to enough people. You can't drive technology without people. We have the talent. 60% of our population, digital natives. All you need to give them is opportunity to learn. And that's why we've started the 3 million technical talent project, which is open to everyone from across the country. We started the pilot in the next 3 months with 30,000 people. And by February next year, we're going to scale that to 300,000, just so that we can ensure that as we train them, we give them the opportunity to find jobs. That is the biggest thing we can explore. And it's been done. It's the same thing China did. It's the same thing India did. And once you have significant pool of talent, it opens you up to opportunities.
1 million digital jobs. Yeah. That's what President Tinubu promised in the first 2 years.
Absolutely.
How much of that have you done in the last 100?
In the last 100?
Can you measure?
No, not fully. That's difficult to measure.
Is that possible?
It is possible. And the way we're approaching it, is not looking to retain all the 1 million in Nigeria. That's the way we're approaching it, because we know there's a global opportunity for technology talent. So our goal is to ensure about 50% of that can be deployed to technology companies locally, but we want Nigeria to become a net exporter of technology talent.
Less than 15% of the GDP is what you said the sector contributed.
No, about over 16%.
16%.
Yeah, last quarter.
But your plan and your target also between now and 2027 is to get way over about 22%.
Our hope is to get about 20%. And you know why we're modest? It's not because we don't think it will do better than that. But because I'm also part of this cabinet and I know what is happening. I know what Minister Alake is doing with mineral resources. I know what agriculture is doing, in that space as well. I know what is happening within health. So we do expect that other sectors will continue to grow as well. So that 22% doesn't mean that it's just only increasing by 6%. No, it's because the GDP and the size of our economy we expect should continue to grow. And if we can push it to 22% of our contribution, that would actually mean the 22% today is not the same as 22% in 4 years' time. Because
you also, part of your plan is to do a 60% government data digitization by the end of 2026. Absolutely. What exactly are you looking at?
So what we're looking at there is Nigerian government has already invested significantly in technology. The problem is not technology, and we've made significant progress. There's the need that most people we're not happy with, right, because of the way it was done. But the reality is that program was successful because we now have over 90% of Nigerian adults identified. There's a BVN which already works. We have our National Population Commission database. So we have a lot of gains in terms of technology, but they are in silos. So our work in this government is to create what we call a digital public infrastructure framework. And what that does is to try and bring up what you call the Nigerian stack. A Nigerian stack will allow us to be able to connect the different silos of technologies that exist within the different parts of government. And once you can do that, it means that Ministry of Education can see some data set that Ministry of Health is seeing.
So why do we have different data all over the place, scattered? Evolution. Are you able to do a digital or data aggregation?
Of course we
such that we do not have 7, 8 agencies of government having working in silo? Is that part of your immediate target?
That's part of what we're trying to drive.
How soon can we achieve that?
That's if you look at the strategic blueprint, that target, I believe, is probably in the first 18 months to 24.
Yeah, before the first 2 years.
Exactly, that's what it is. Because, again, it's not just a technology issue. It's about harmonizing different.
The former president has set up a committee that they should sit down and he gave them a timeline that all the agencies of government with data should come together and harmonize. Up to today, nothing has
because it's a people issue. In technology, and this is not unique to Nigeria, in technology, you cannot fix people issue with technology or directives only. Because you need to engage people. They need to understand how to go through that process. You need the capacity to do it. And that's why we put it there as first 18 months to 24 months. It's setting the standard, ensuring that the key actors have the proper buy-in, and you also have the resources to actually make it happen, which is what we're doing.
On a final note,
Yes.
NICOMSAT.
Yes.
What about that? Because a lot of people will say, we have not even utilized the capacity of, and we have the third one, isn't it? Or the second one?
The second one, but we don't have it yet, but there's a plan for it. But before we even get to that, before we invest money into that, we're extremely fortunate that we have a satellite expert now running NICOMSAT. The lady there, she sold satellites all over Africa. She has a solid understanding. In the first 2 weeks of getting into office, she's optimized our Ka band and ensure that that same satellite can now provide internet connectivity. I think that's where Nigerians will see a lot of surprises. You know, despite the things that we need to meander to ensure that things can get done, she's extremely aggressive. She's got my support to ensure that the Nigerian satellite contributes significantly to our economic development.
Dr. Bosun Tijani, Honorable Minister for Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy. We will come back and we'll look back at your some of your timelines and some of your targets, and we're praying for you, and we're hoping that you will achieve the very best, because it's going to be in the collective interest of our people.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much indeed for coming tonight.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks.
Let's also tell you before we close that President Bola Tinubu has arrived back in Abuja in Nigeria after days in Dubai attending the climate change summit at the COP28, and he's been received back in the country by some top government officials. That's how we draw the content on the program tonight. Thank you so much indeed, everyone, for watching. I'm Sean Kimale. Bye-bye.